Okay. Peter, good afternoon. It being 4 o'clock or a little after, and we have a quorum for our July 27th Finance Committee meeting. Come to order. Chief Rudd, you're here, so you're going to...
Are you taping? I always forget to put the tape on. You just hit record.
Is that, you didn't turn that on, did you? No, you didn't.
Just then I'll get yelled at again.
Okay. Meeting's called to order, our July 27th, 2016 FinCom meeting to consider the overages on the bidding for the new fire station. But before we get to that, seeing nobody other than Chief Rudd here, I'm assuming we have no public comment. It does not appear that we have any minutes from last week's meeting or 2 weeks ago, so we'll hold those in abeyance. And so we'll get right to the review of the fund transfer. Brian, how do you want to handle this?
So the consultant just emailed me and said that, where is it? He was actually in Texas and he was going to call in, and he ended up grabbing an earlier flight, and he's just shutting down for takeoff. So I guess I'm going to have to go through it all. And
Paraphrase?
unless we, the only other option, because we have to do something by August 4th, or else we will, the bids will expire and we'll automatically have to go back through and do that entire process over, which will actually set us back even further. So we can go through, or we can try to do it for, we have an August 4th meeting, right, scheduled.
Right. That's a week
I
from.
guess what the other option is we possibly move that meeting to April 2nd or 3rd, or we go through it now and hopefully we'll be able to answer all your questions to the best of our ability.
Well, I think, I'm open up to what you all want to do. I do know Stephen's certainly done some work, and I suspect only the OPM is going to be able to answer those questions. So
that, without seeing the questions, I suspect that may be correct.
Yeah.
I don't want to say yes or no, but I would
what do you
believe
guys?
that's probably true.
What's your pleasure?
If you'd like to, if we can proceed, and if we're not getting anywhere, then obviously we defer to.
What are the chief may be able to answer the questions. I'm not entirely sure of what the work that Stephen has done is, so I'm not sure.
Stephen wanted to.
Well, what I've done is just a comparative analysis of relatively recent construction projects of similar sized facilities in Brewster, Chatham, Oak Bluffs, and Hyannis. And my questions are all the same. Why are our costs, our per square foot construction costs for similarly equipped facilities with the same number of garage bays, roughly the same amount of apparatus space, and similar numbers of bunks, 5, 7, I think one of them may have 8, but we're paying at least 55% more, and in some cases 110% more per square foot than these other communities, including Oak Bluffs, which did it the cheapest. They have a facility that's about 1,800 square feet smaller than ours, same amount of apparatus space, 5 bunks instead of 7. Their project, completed in December, was completed for $8.3 million. So
I'm honestly not familiar with Oak Bluffs. I don't know what their project was.
Okay.
I think our project came in at about $700 a square foot. OPM was telling...
It did, but now with the new overage, it's going to come to $822 a square foot.
Okay. I know that on the mainland, I've been told now that they're coming in about $500 a square foot. We are dramatically higher up here. Our costs, as you all know, are much higher. Our estimators, KBA, they thought this project would come in a lot lower. They went out to estimation 3 times, and every time it came in under what we had. They didn't expect this, but we only had 3 bidders. One of them was disqualified, and this is where we ended up.
I do know that one of the overages was with the filed sub-bid. Because of the size and scope of a lot of the work, we have to use filed sub-bids, which is for the subcontractors. And I believe it was the heating and ventilating came in almost $1 million more than the original estimate because there was only one bidder and they knew that. So we really are. There is, I don't know exactly remember what John said about the additional Nantucket factor, but there's certainly that came in higher too than what they had anticipated. And we have to remember we do have a mobilization cost that some of those places are not going to have.
Well, Oak Bluffs, I would imagine, has similar costs.
Well,
Similar.
similar, but maybe I'm not sure without seeing what they came in at.
You wouldn't expect that the comparative difference is 112%. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
When it comes to bidding, I mean, a lot of contractors limited because of their bonding ability. I mean, things like that. Do we really limit the pool of people down that would bid because do they have to be bonded?
Well, I mean, everybody in any public construction project, like under Chapter 149, there is performance bonds and payment bonds that have to be put in, but those are factored into the cost. So, I think there's DCAM qualifications that they have to meet to be able to perform on to do these contracts, which I believe is why the first bidder was actually was disqualified because I believe they had omitted their DCAM update. I think is so that's why they were omitted.
Right.
Or disqualified because that was a requirement of the bid. So I think there's just a limited number of companies that do this work, and they're all very busy right now.
Our OPM actually went out and tried to aggressively get companies to bid on it. He was aggressive in trying to get companies to bid on the sub-bids and the general contractors, and we still only got 3 bids.
Yeah.
I guess a surprise to me is Bright Brothers. You know, they're here, they're working on a project very similar to the school budget. Construction came up higher than what we thought. And it's funny, that OPM, which is different from this OPM, reached out and looked at under your option 2, the paving and fencing, and they were going to pull that out, which they did. So I guess a couple things. One, Bright Brothers, their mobilization costs, one would think, would be de minimis because they're physically already here. They don't really self-perform a lot of the actual trades within the construction, so that helps your argument, you know, because they're going to reach outside and be the GC of a lot of subs. Do you know, this is probably a question for the OPM, do you know specifically what the line item for paving would be if you're potentially trying to value engineer that off to the side? Do you know what that?
They did. The OPM spoke with one of the contractors and asked them that question, and they said if they had to guess, I think they were guessing $800,000 or $900,000 is about what the paving would have been, but they can't. Sorry.
But we have to remember one thing about this: we can't remove those before we even consider signing the contract, because we can't negotiate with a bidder before we actually sign the contract. So even if we decide we want to do that, we're not able to until after we even consider that, until after the contract is signed.
I think that there was a discussion with the low bidder about the couple of pricey things in the bid. One of them was the paving, and the bidder's price was somewhere around $800,000 or $900,000. Our price would be something lower than that.
Would it be, Libby, would it be the same contractor, subcontractor doing the paving as we ran into with the school?
I don't know exactly what that is, but
The company who bid that part.
What we talked about was possibly a change order later on, possibly, where we would do the paving under the paving contract.
Yeah. And the HVAC subcontractor, you said you only had one bid, and is that HVAC contractor's number in each of those 3 bids?
think there was more than one sub-bid for the HVAC. I don't have it in front of me. I thought there were
John
three.
was only one for was trained.
Or one manufacturer of the products.
One manufacturer of the
It's
product.
one manufacturer of the products. There were
Well,
three
that would have been
companies
based
that
on
bid the HVAC
spec.
installation.
Yeah, that would have been based on the spec the architect
Right.
specified, and they would have gone right to that spec. So
Right.
was there any value engineering or add alternates relevant to some of those subcontractors? Instead of going trained, you could go carrier, and any of that take place, do we know, with the OPM?
I know they went through the station itself and tried to pull as much money. We pulled every square footage we could out of it. They looked at the HVAC system and tried to find ways to make it less expensive. I think at the end of the day, to make the new system work with the old one, the geothermal system, and be green, they had to have, there was no alternate that would match up with the existing system. So if we went to a different system, it would have to be totally separate. It wouldn't take advantage of the geothermal system we have. It would be an independent HVAC system, which could be a little less expensive initially, but over time, we wouldn't get the savings from the geothermal system, so it wouldn't make sense.
And you, Chief, you mentioned the system we have. Does that mean utilizing the system as part of this?
It's
structure?
utilizing the system, yes.
Good.
Yeah.
And was that system, Libby, designed for the ability to piggyback, or is it running at a efficiency right now or below efficiency?
It was designed to have the fire station.
Good.
with it.
Okay. So there was that forethought. Great.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Bright Brothers. We would love, I've heard great things about Bright Brothers, but they came in at 1.5 million,
Yeah,
I
they're
think,
the
higher
high.
than the low bid. And like you said, you would think it would have been lower. They're already here, they're already mobilized, but for some reason, maybe they've got lots of work, I don't know.
I mean, I'd hate to say it, but I'm probably coming from the viewpoint of I'd love to blow it up and rebid it, but that's a lot of work too. Yeah, exactly.
But I think that the concern is if we rebid it, that everybody knows what the bids are, and, you know, they
It's
could
not
go
gonna
up
get you
higher.
anywhere.
So
You're hoping that you'd have a different contractor bidding is what you're hoping. That's just,
like I said, the
Maybe that may
OPM,
be
John
the
went
trend.
out and aggressively tried to get these other companies to bid, and they just, some of them weren't interested for some reason. They must be too busy, or it's too much of a headache to work on Nantucket, or I don't know.
and for all of us, we're just getting ready to do a project ourselves at the club. We ran into it with the school. We ran into the same parameters and the same numbers and the lack of bidders. And, you know, from a timing perspective, it's not that we picked the wrong time, but from a contractor standpoint,
Everybody's really busy.
yeah, it's true.
And when you're a contractor and
It's
you're real
frustrating.
busy, you put higher margins on your job, and if you get it, great, and if you don't, you don't.
And coming here, you're going to have to pay more,
Yep.
a lot more for housing.
We're just going under contract with a company that's not going to even, we're not going to open the building for 2 years, and we had to get into the queue.
I know the vineyard's left, but I know the vineyard housing costs are a lot less than here. I think overall, I'm guessing, I don't know the vineyard super well, but I imagine their costs. I know they've got some transportation costs, but they're, 3 miles to sea, we're 30 miles.
Right, but we're talking about a delta of $10 million
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
for the same size building.
We don't know who bid that job, do we?
No, I mean,
Unfortunately, I'm
Shouldn't
not
be willing to
familiar
cooperate
with
with
that
us.
project, so.
And that one was probably bid over a year and a half ago then, if it was done in December.
More than likely, yeah.
I was making that point, that it seems to,
they
a bad economy.
approved the expenditure a year before us, 1 year before us.
it just seems like it's, when it talks about bonding and the ability to get bonded, unfortunately, I've experienced that recently, that because of the bad economy and a lot of people took off, it's not, just for companies to get bonded, it's hard to do anymore. So that was just the point I was trying to make. It eliminates a lot of contractors.
Right.
Yeah, but I think you have to be pre-qualified by the Division of Construction and whatever it is.
Right,
Would require-
but
would
to even
probably-
get there, it's
Yeah,
hard to
you'd-
do.
You'd have to have a certain minimum of bonding, whatever capacity, whatever they have. So, anyway. So, with that said, do we want to hear from the OPM?
Is there a separate gym in the fire station, separate from the one that's below us right now? On the original plans from 2008, there was a separate workout facility on the basement of that facility.
I think the original plans did. The plans we have right now call for a space in the basement where we plan on putting some gym equipment in. We looked at the gym they have here. It's big enough for what they have for personnel, but it wouldn't fit double the personnel. They've grown here and they've expanded into that space, and that space is not big enough for both of us. I think what would probably happen is we'd have a small area in our basement, and we would share, so that maybe the waste would get put in one and cardiovascular in the other, and they'd be able to use both spaces. They're not huge spaces. We're not building a fitness club in the basement, that's for sure. There's a locker room in the basement so they can change for work, and a small area that they would be able to have some fitness equipment. I was told by the chief of police that they're putting in a digital gun range down there that's going to lose half the existing gym, which is already smaller than the original construction. So ultimately, maybe they'll all be using ours, which would be fine. We'll all use one. We're not looking for a huge space. It might be two little spaces, or there might end up being one space that we all use. But there won't be two gyms that could fit all of us.
So during the value engineering process that went on, in November 2014, we were 14 million exactly, and it was estimated that the cost could be lowered through cost engineering. So what happened in the cost engineering process? What did we give up?
What did we lose?
Yeah.
We shrunk the size of the offices. We lost a training room. Some of the brick areas went to shingle areas. They redid some of the HVAC to try to reduce the cost. Basically, we just reduced square footage. We tried to relay everything out to shrink the square footage. I think we pulled 8 or 10,000 square feet out. I think it was 8,000 square feet we pulled out of the design to try to make it smaller. So we ended up back at about the same square footage as they had designed back 10 years ago. But the original design, when this building was built, we ended up with the same square footage they were planning back then. Is what we ended up with.
Well, I thought that's where the plan started. We went up 8,000 square feet, and then we took it
No,
back out.
when we first sat down with the OPMs and the architects, we said this is what we need. We wanted a training room, and the design came in at about 8,000 square feet more than what it was 10 years ago. We have more equipment than we had 10 years ago. We have more people than we have 10 years ago. But we ended up cutting it back to what it was 10 years ago, the 22,000 square feet.
Go ahead.
Just to follow up on Steve's question, was that specifically horizontal square footage or vertical? Where did we lose?
Horizontal or vertical?
So was it
Oh,
on the ground or was it up and down? Where was
on the
square
ground.
footage?
It's still the same number of stories. There's 2 stories for the administration building, a single story for the apparatus floor. So we shrunk the outside square footage. We tried to move stuff into the basement, which was less expensive square footage
Correct.
than
That was my
to
point.
try to, yeah. So we took the locker rooms that were upstairs, put them down in the basement,
Yeah.
tried to shrink the package down to bring the back down to the 22,000 square feet and reduce the cost.
Anything else? Dr. Tiffany?
You know, I don't know what to say.
That's a first.
I know, I'm speechless. But the only question I'd have is that apparently, and I'm not too familiar with the bidding process. Okay. I'm used to the bidding process I used in private business, which is substantially different. But there's no flexibility in that bidding process. You have to do it a certain way, and that's it. And you have to go, and certain people have to be certified to be.
Mass procurement requirements are very strict and very exact.
Yeah. For instance, we have a couple of large contractors on the island. They're not apparently they're not able to be used.
Apparently not.
Because they would, if we could use them, that might mitigate some of the problems that
That'd be great, but they're not certified, so
Yeah,
we can't
that's
use
the
them.
problem. That they've made a business decision not to certify.
Nothing to do about it.
No, nothing, there's no waiver, there's, state law is what state law is.
There is no legal process.
No.
We find the same thing at the airport where like Kobo does a lot of our work because they're the only ones that are, I don't say crazy enough, but the qualifications, the amount of working capital they need, no one else wants to deal with it.
Henry, you want?
I mean, second time sitting here, so it's a little
Yeah, I'm
tough.
not-
But I mean, I'd like to hear the consultant. You're paying to consult, right? So
Yeah, I mean, an earlier flight is nice, but I'd like his input.
Yeah.
For the $976,000.
Yeah.
If you want to hear from him, then obviously we're going to have to reschedule the meeting or table it, and this needs to get dealt with before August 3rd.
That's right, because we got to sign the contract on the 3rd this way.
David, is it fair to ask either the three of you if you looked at the OPMs, I'm assuming they put this together,
Yeah.
and there were options, where would you lean towards?
Here, I have them.
Is that fair? To ask the
Brian's.
Yeah,
Brian's
we
got
went
some
over this.
recommendations.
So that
We've gone over this internally with the OPM several times, hours, and I think what we came up with was what is what's in Brian's memo that you're getting right now. Yeah.
So the recommendation is to use option 2, which in the PowerPoint presentation is to essentially go between now and town meeting by removing all the contingencies and using the furniture, fixture, and equipment monies of about $440,000, which would leave us a shortfall of $141,860, which we would be coming to you for a reserve fund transfer to cover that, so that we would be able to sign the contract within the scope and the time frame within the bid documents to be able to start and lock in the pricing. What we would anticipate doing then is going to town meeting, the special town meeting, and ask the people at town meeting to transfer approximately $350,000 from the property insurance line, because we put our property insurance out to bid and we saved about, right around $370,000 this year versus what we had budgeted for that. So we have that available. It's a known cost, so I'm not taking any risk by transferring that money. So we would transfer that into the capital projects fund, and then we would be asking, I've recommended to the town manager that we use the capital stabilization fund to make up the difference between the 1,273 and the 350, so that we could not only cover the shortfall in the capital projects fund, but also replenish the reserve fund for the money that we're asking for today. I've also made the recommendation to the town manager that at the April town meeting, after free cash is certified, that we commit to some amount, which we're still in discussions on, an amount either to fully replenish the capital stabilization or to partially replenish it, depending on what the rest of the needs are. So, which is outlined in the memo that I had written for her and given her today. So that is the recommendation from me to the town manager on how to successfully navigate this and hopefully not incur any more costs by having to go out to bid again, which I'm a little reluctant to do, and hopefully you'll agree with that recommendation.
Libby, this is acceptable to you?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
Libby, this is, we're gonna take 950 out of the stabilization fund. Would it be your intention next year in the next budget to replenish that?
Yes. We're talking the capital project stabilization fund that I think was your brainchild, actually. And it really might be for something like this. And the idea would be to replenish it hopefully from free cash at the next town meeting, yes.
Peter?
Libby, what is Brian, the balance of that account right now?
No, it's 1.2. Where did we put the 250? I forget. It's around 1.5 million. I think we might have done. I'm trying to remember exactly where we put the 250. I think we put 250,000 into it on top of the 1.2 that we put last year. So right around 1.5, give or take, plus the interest that's been accrued in it.
So if we have another situation that is...
We have some funding available if we have to, and which is in the memo. I did recommend to the town manager that we commit to either replenishing it all, depending on where free cash ends up, or a portion of it, depending on where free cash ends up. But my recommendation is to commit to doing that.
any history in the past, Libby, that you can recall that the town has done something like this?
We did do something similar, not using other funding sources with the school, because we went out and signed the contract for the school and then went to town meeting to get the supplemental borrowing authorization. So we have done something similar within the last year or so.
So this is, I was going to ask that question. So this is the new fund. This isn't the regular stabilization fund where you have to
That's
pay
correct.
it back the next year by
No.
town meeting rules
You
and.
don't have to.
It's prudent.
It's prudent to do it. I mean,
Yeah, I
there's
just
no.
thought the other one said you had to do that.
Well, that's
No.
a town policy that says we should do it, but
Okay.
it's prudent to do it. I mean, we shouldn't be just tapping it and not putting it back. So that's why I did put that recommendation in there.
Particularly with the fact that it's something we've just gotten started.
Yes.
It isn't real flush, you know what I mean? So, I think we were looking at it as being pretty low to begin with, without this grant.
Excuse me.
So it'd be nice to just
Yes.
bring it back anyway. And I think that's a show, that would be a show of good faith, I
Right.
think, and so forth around that.
Okay. Sure.
Well, I think Libby said this is acceptable to her. If we want to condition any approval we might make either today or, in a subsequent meeting if we postpone.
Well, that's kind
That
of
ought to be.
that's kind of where
I mean,
it's
we
going.
certainly could
Yeah.
say, make that as our condition for our.
Yeah.
If I may, just from a conversation standpoint, I'm not sure if our OPM can give us anything more specific to us here than they already have gone over a myriad of different times. I'd be willing to make a motion on this conversation.
Hold that.
Yeah.
Are you okay with?
No, I think we should hear from the person that we fired to manage the project. I mean, I consider these to be large amounts of money, and it may be that we have no other option, but I'd like to hear from the person who's in charge of soliciting these bids why we only had bids from people who overshot the HVAC estimates by $1 million. We didn't have that issue. I understand there's a difference between public and private sector bidding, but we didn't have that issue with the 30,000 square foot storage facility down the road. Maybe there's only 2 people who want to come work for a municipal project. Can't imagine why that's the case, but I'd like to hear why he was unsuccessful getting other bids.
We can certainly arrange that, but the private projects and the public projects are 100% different. And
I get that, but we're 112% more expensive than Oak Bluffs, so somebody can explain it.
Yep,
just
I'm
saying
sure.
he's the guy to do it.
I'm sure he will be able to explain it. It's a little easier to get to Oak Bluffs than it is to get here, and
A little bit,
a little.
yeah.
There are, many requirements for a public project, reporting and otherwise, that people don't want to bother with, so they go to do private projects, and there's plenty of that around too.
Right. But from November 2014, when we were talking about $14 million, we're talking about $4 million more. I mean, that's enough that we get the person who's making almost $1 million to manage the project in on the discussion.
Let's just do it before August 3rd.
So you need to take any decision we make to the selectmen's meeting on the 3rd of August.
The
okay?
selectmen already
I
voted
thought
this
they-
option.
right.
And it was, obviously, we need the FinCom transfer from you all, and they knew that. So the contract on their end is basically approved, but that is a critical date with regard to the bid. It's going to expire if we don't sign a contract
Well,
by then.
on the 4th?
The 4th, whatever.
Yeah, okay.
This is Wednesday, right?
But I don't think we want to wait till the 3rd to make a decision that's due on the 4th, if we can avoid it.
It's a Thursday,
Yep.
a week from this Thursday. So, we have other options. I don't know when he can get here.
We'll have to reach out to him. We may have to do it by phone, depending on what his schedule is. I'm not sure. But we'll send him an email and let him know that you have additional questions that you'd would like answered, and you'd like him here to do it, or via phone.
What would we be shooting for?
Could you shoot for Monday?
I would prefer to do, I'm off island on Tuesday. I mean, not crucial, although we'd be.
Monday's good for me.
Yeah, Monday works.
Monday at this
Doesn't
time?
work.
Or
Yeah.
another time if that,
This time is best for me.
okay.
Other other than that,
Peter can't meet on Monday.
I cook on Monday.
Can you meet in the morning? John, could you meet in the morning if we had to? Okay.
What about this week? What about Friday?
We can't get it posted.
Yeah, we can't, we have
Yeah.
48-hour deadline, I can't get it posted in time for Friday.
What about if we just continue the meeting?
You're supposed to post it.
Even when you carry over because we couldn't finish the business because somebody couldn't be here?
The advice from town council has always been, since open meeting law changes, you should post it.
Can we call Catherine and have a 5 o'clock meeting? Can she post it like right this minute?
No, because she's not there anymore. And they have a rule in their office that they don't post anything after 2 o'clock.
Okay. So Monday
You
it
knew
is.
you were going to hear something like that.
you just spoiled my day.
What's a good time Monday? I mean, I'm typically 6:30 or 8:30.
You are. I mean, John, could you do this at 3:30?
I could do it at 3, actually.
I do three.
Could everybody do it at
Sure.
3? If we did it at 3 o'clock?
Yeah, why don't we shoot for 3 o'clock? I'm not sure I'm going to be able to be here for that, but as long as the OPM's here, that's probably better. So
Go ahead.
why don't we shoot for that? Now, just as a backup, and if he can't be here in person, I'm sure he can be here by phone. As a backup, I hate to do Wednesday, but what about Wednesday? But I'm not going to be able to be here, and I'm not sure about Brian after 4, because we have selectmen.
I can do
Well, I think that, so we've got your recommendation.
Yep.
We want to hear from the OPM. I mean, there's probably only 2 answers to the question. One is our recommendation would be to blow the thing up, or probably follow along somewhat what you guys have outlined. I mean, I don't think there are too many more options. But I'm in support of Stephen. I think it would be helpful to, I mean, notwithstanding that we know that it's more expensive to build on Nantucket, but
Right. It's as much about future projects for me as it is about this one. What can we do to better, hit our estimates? I mean, can we be doing something else in our advertising to solicit bids from more people? I don't know, but he does.
so is that a 3 o'clock Monday?
Yeah, let's shoot for 3 o'clock Monday, and if somehow that doesn't work, we'll get in touch with you, David, about a backup plan.
I mean, I think if we all got together on Wednesday, I mean, you're still going to have plenty, you're going to have enough time to get a contract signed if we make the approval on the, I mean, once we have to do is just sign the transfer.
Right.
Then you're
Yeah.
all set.
Yeah.
Okay? Excuse me. Date of next meeting, and if you guys can go, I have one question for you. By next meeting, will we have citizen petition submittals for special town meeting available to us? Are they going to be certified or
I
whatever she has to do?
Doubt they'll be certified because they're due Monday at 4. So you won't have them at 3.
No, I'm sorry. For the meeting on the 4th, I apologize.
Oh, is there already
We
a
have,
meeting on the 4th?
yeah, we've scheduled a meeting on the 4th.
Just to go over the leading indicators that we get.
Okay, I'm not going to be there on the 4th. But yes, by the 4th, you should have the warrant articles.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so could we add that to a discussion of introduction? So citizens' warrant articles are due on the 1st at 3 o'clock, and we'll have them so we could just, if we wanted to have a quick discussion on what we're going to have to do over the next few weeks.
We'll add that to the agenda for the 4th.
That would be great.
Yep.
And then I committed to send a timeline to these guys, and I asked Linnell and,
Okay.
anyway, just,
Did it not get, if it didn't get, I'll do it tonight when I get back to the office.
If you-
I didn't realize it hadn't been
if-
done.
no,
I
it
apologize for
hasn't
that, so
been
we'll
done.
get it to you.
yeah.
It's online, but we can.
Oh, is it online?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm going back right after this, so I'll make sure you have it. I thought it had been done, so that's my fault.
Yeah, the one I had was the original one, Libby.
Okay.
But if you've got it online,
Double
it,
check it and make sure it's updated.
okay. So, right, any other business? So, motion to adjourn?
Okay.
We're done?
Thank you.
Thank you.